Muslims are a foreign government, a nation at war with America. Muslims are a nation, a foreign government with their own legal constitution, the Quran, and Muslim legal system for governing all Muslims as citizens of their nation, called Sharia law. Muslim is not a name our founding fathers had even heard of, according to all dictionaries of their time. Islam was not in their dictionaries. Jefferson described Mohammedanism in his Virginia Resolution as a false religion, as did Daniel Webster's 1826 dictionary, which defined the word God as God Jehovah by name exclusively. A secondary Webster definition of the word God used a lowercase g and defined all other gods as false gods, whose religions were false religions. So our founding fathers' intent was clearly to provide legal religious rights only to true religions and not to false religions. Religion protected by our Constitution are for believers in God Jehovah and the Holy Bible our government bought with taxes to educate Native American Indians and our citizens' children in public schools. No disputes arose about a Quran or any conflicting false religion or false god. The Bible says, "But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, not of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God." In John chapter 1, verses 12 and 13. All Muslims are involved in waging war against America in the manner America wages war. Our American military does the actual battlefield fighting as our government determines and assigns, with some military assigned to battles, others in a support role to those in battle, and all Americans have our support role in fighting our wars by paying our taxes that fund our military. Many Americans may be against a certain war, but we all pay our taxes regardless, and thus all Americans support our nation's war efforts, either with our wealth or with our person. If you're a citizen of our American nation, we are all in it together. Each of us have a role in fighting our nation's wars, and we do it very well when united we stand. The Muslim nation operates basically the same, but we refuse to see it, to our great peril. Muslim nation government is driven by imams who rule each local mosque with sole authority as generals or commanders over every Muslim in that local area the mosque serves. Muslims know their imam has sole power to be judge, jury, and executioner over every Muslim in the reach of the imam's mosque, including anywhere in America, where our Constitution and legal system is subordinated to Muslim nation government's constitution, their Quran, and legal system, their Sharia law, which demands and requires all Muslims replace all existing governments, including America, and replace it with the Muslim nation government, or caliphate, as they call it. Muslim nation government imams are very organized, training young people for their military for fighting battles, often solo acts of terrorism, while other poor Muslims are chosen for roles as suicide bombers, support roles of all kinds. But know that every Muslim wages war. All Muslims are required to pay a minimum of 2.5% of their earnings, of their wealth, to their Muslim nation government, operating in mosques where imams funnel Muslim nation taxes and donations called zakat. Z-A-K-A-T. Now, zakat is a perversion of Judeo-Christian tithes, except Muslims are required and pay up or get reassigned by an imam. They pay up or risk a new role as a suicide bomber. Now, you need to understand how insanely ridiculous it would be to call our American military battlefield soldiers radicals or extremists just because they do their duties as soldiers, obeying orders from their nation's government. Americans who support our military frontline soldiers in some way, or all of us who just pay our taxes to fund their fighting efforts, are we to be called moderates? No. When we war as the American nation, we're all in it together, as long as we belong to our American nation government. It's the same insanity to label some in the Muslim nation as radicals or extremists because they fight and kill on behalf of their Muslim nation, yet label other Muslims as moderates because their assigned role is to pay their zakat, personal taxes on their earnings, to fund that Muslim fighting and killing on behalf of their Muslim nation. Muslims are all in it together, just like Americans unite in support of our nation. The Muslim nation has one united purpose and mission. All Muslims must wage war in their assigned role to overthrow every government on planet Earth and replace every nation's government with the Muslim nation's government and the Muslim nation's constitution, which is their Quran. Muslim nation's government is called a caliphate. What is so difficult to understand about the public Muslim mission to establish their global caliphate and eliminate all other nations and our governments, including America? Muslim nation has a legal system all Muslims must obey, which is Sharia law. It is brutal, uncivilized, based on slavery for life and death to anyone rejecting it, completely incompatible with America. Halal, H-A-L-A-L, halal food is simply food offered in prayer to the Muslim nation's god Allah, the moon god of Arabia, prior to killing an animal or preparing it for eating. So why are we Americans allowing halal? It is animals sacrificed in ritual worship to the moon god of Arabia. Hello? Animals sacrificed to false gods in God Jehovah land cannot stand. Yet schools and prisons are bullied every day into submission to false god sacrifices. Judeo-Christians who knowingly tolerate this, you have no excuse before God Jehovah. Our nation was founded to serve exclusively, to advance His kingdom and defend it. Muslims have the world chasing their tails like puppy dogs, creating paralysis by analysis by using chosen terms and definitions to cause mass confusion and distract focus from the truth. While sheep everywhere study Sharia law, Muslims laugh, knowing how Sharia is a black hole even Muslims get swallowed up in, prevented from seeing plain truth while chasing that tail. Muslims know there are a dozen Muslim types and tribes who have viciously differing beliefs about Sharia law, and that Sharia law is their government legal system nobody agrees on. One example is unlimited adultery and polygamy, known as mutaz. Shiite Muslim men can and do have unlimited numbers of wives, called mutaz, temporary wives for anywhere from 1 to 24 hours. And Sunni Muslims hate them for it, and they reject mutaz as adultery, immoral, and illegal. Civil war between these groups over mutaz and other major Sharia law issues is simply never going to be resolved between Muslims, as these sects have murdered each other over Muslim Quran and Sharia law disputes since Muhammad's days in the year 630 A.D. Stop chasing your tail learning Sharia law and focus on our enemies at war, Muslims. God Jehovah says Arabs are a great nation. 80% today are Muslims. Genesis 21:13 and 18 in the NIV says, I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring, referring to Abraham. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, What's the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy as he grew up. He lived in the desert and became an archer. Ishmael is the father of the Arab nation, obviously a great nation, second largest in number only to the Chinese nation. Living in constant hostility is the destiny of the Arab nation, as Genesis chapter 16 tells us, starting verse 7. The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, Hagar, slave of Sarah, where have you come from, and where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress, Sarah, she answered. Then the angel of the Lord told her, Go back to your mistress and submit to her. The angel added, I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. The angel of the Lord also said to her, You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers. She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. She said, You are God who sees me. For she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. That's why the well was called Bir Lahai Roi. It is still there between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abraham a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son that she had born. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. Now, Al-Masudi says the word Arabs was initially applied to the Ishmaelites of the Araba Valley. Arab identity is defined independently of religious identity and predates the rise of Islam, with historically proven Arab Christian kingdoms and Arab Jewish tribes, among countless others, documented in the Holy Bible. The prophet Nehemiah records it clearly in chapter 2. But when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official and Gesheb the Arab heard it, they mocked us and despised us and said, What is this thing you're doing? Are you rebelling against the king? So I answered them and said to them, The God of heaven will give us success. Therefore we, his servants, will arise and build. But you have no portion, right, or memorial in Jerusalem. Muhammad invented Muslim Islam nation government in 600 AD by brutal mass murder of Arab Christians and Jews, who were beheaded en masse. The Muslim Islam terrorist forced slavery system they label a religion as a cover for their public documented global war. Given a choice of being a Muslim or murdered, Arabs chose life as slaves to live. Men, women, boys, or girls who reject the Muslim nation government are to be killed. No due process or trial. Women are slaves to their husbands, who can legally beat or kill any family member. conversion and submission as a live or die choice, a great incentive program, which was an easy sell to poor Arabs struggling to survive. Poor Arabs being told as Muslims that they were the best of all men on earth by the Quran misled countless millions of God-seeking Arabs away from God Jehovah to worship a false god and a self-proclaimed prophet who had sex with 9-year-old girls, beheaded 700 innocent Jews who would not submit to his Muslim nation government, and worse. Today, after centuries of forced submission, most Arabs are Muslim, with a minority adhering to other faiths, largely Christianity. Arabs are generally Sunni, Shia, or Zaidi Muslims, but currently 10% of Arabs are Arab Christians. This figure does not include Christian ethnic groups such as Assyrians or Syriacs, and those designated as Arameans or Phoenicians. The Arab cultures went through a mixing, melting pot process, and Arab countries share a common culture in most aspects. Particularly non-Arab people, are about 80% of the world's Muslim population, do not form part of the Arab world, but instead comprise what is the geographically larger and more diverse Muslim nation. With the spread of Muslim Islam in the 7th century, and as the language of the Quran, Arabic language and culture, was widely disseminated with the early Muslim Islam conquests and forced cultural domination, Arab culture and language, however, began a more limited diffusion before the Islamic Age, first spreading in West Asia, beginning in the 2nd century as Arab Christians began migrating north from Arabia into the Syrian desert, southwestern Iraq, and the Levant. God Jehovah's desire and intent was and is for Jews, Arabs, and Christians to worship God Jehovah of the Holy Bible only. Arab nation fell into deception to Muhammad the Muslim, much like Christians fell into deception by evil Catholics until Martin Luther exposed the disgusting evil that started the Protestant Reformation, the root word there being protest. Muslims, Jews, and Christians have one tragic, evil, historical character flaw in common. All three have been deceived by man, false prophets, evil religious leaders, to reject God Jehovah of the Holy Bible, and all three have suffered his wrath and consequences. No man, no prophet has authority between God Jehovah and his chosen child that he loves. Any man led by any man instead of God Jehovah is a mindless sheep, not a child of God Jehovah, who pursues a personal love relationship with every child, including me and you. This applies to Muslim Muhammad, Christian pastors or elders, Catholic popes, priests, bishops, or Jewish rabbis. All any man should do is lead people to know and experience God Jehovah in a personal, mutual love relationship. God's Holy Bible says Jews are God's chosen people, and Israel his chosen nation, with defined borders, with Jerusalem as its capital and holy city. Arabs are a nation God chose to be a nation, but nomadic, with no defined land borders. Muslims have conquered and misled that great Arab nation, longing and needing God Jehovah, to worship a false god with whom no personal relationship is possible. America is God's chosen nation, whose territories expanded under obedience to God, whose purpose has always been to honor Jesus Christ and advance his kingdom. The Muslim nation is a government at war whose documented, publicly stated mission is to eliminate America, and all Muslims are united in that war. Religion is irrelevant and certainly not a constitutional right to any citizen of any nation waging war on America. Christianity is the number one enemy to Muslims, all Muslims. How do Muslims regard Christianity? First and foremost, Muslims see Christianity as an expression of infidel practices and values. We are despised as kafirs, lowest form of life on earth, despite what is said to our face. Muslims see Christians as the most potent ideology they face, far more potent than other religions, communism or atheism. If the most potent foe can be subjugated, all other foes will become simply a mop-up action. Although they regard Christianity as a potent ideology, Muslims tend to regard Christian people as passive, easy targets, especially Christians who live in the democratic West, who seem to Muslims to have a live and let live attitude as part of the freedom of religion that we enjoy in our democracies. Muslims see very few defensive measures set up against their aggressive war activities. Muslims see the Christian West, and primarily the United States, as being responsible for many of their problems experienced in the Middle East. For example, the establishment of the State of Israel, the establishment of military bases in Saudi Arabia and other nations, the introduction into the Middle East of Western culture in all its forms that are opposed to Muslims and Islam. Christians must know and defend God's Word. Stand with Israel, whose capital is Jerusalem, and, quote, Arabs have no portion, right, or memorial in Jerusalem. The covenant between God and Ishmael, the father of the Arab nation, is well defined. The covenant between God and Isaac and his Jewish nation, Israel, and Jerusalem is well defined. Muslim nation government did not exist until Muhammad created it in 600 AD. The Muslim nation government is at war with every other government on planet Earth. A war started by Muhammad in 600 AD with the mission and purpose to conquer by force every government and person on earth and force them to submit to their Muslim nation government or die.